Hi everyone, welcome to Limited Archetypes. I am working with Jamie Rigatti today.
Hello.
So this is sealed. Now, a lot of people wonder what the difference between sealed and draft is. Would you like to elaborate?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, sure. Well, you know what? That's something I'm still learning myself. I do a lot of drafting, and I always try to build a draft deck in sealed, and that is incorrect.
I know a lot of people they do tend to think that because a particular archetype or a particular card is good in draft, that's definitely not always the case in sealed. And the reason why is because of the pool. You're talking about opening 3 packs, picking specific cards in a draft, versus opening 6 packs and using whatever you may have. So let's look at this right now. This is our sealed pool for a competitive Swiss sealed league. At first glance, you'll see that we do have the constrictor, which is a great card. We do have a fatal push. So a lot of people would say, oh well, you're gonna probably go green black splash some sort of color or something along those lines. The problem is that in all honesty, Snake, while a strong card and Push also while a strong card, they're not always the greatest in sealed, and you need a lot of support. And while we did have a Tusker, a Hunt the Weak, and a couple of Seed Sculptors, we really didn't have enough support um, counter wise to merit playing the Winding Constrictor. Um, and our red pool was incredibly strong. You're looking at in our deck right now, we have 2 Chandra's Revolution, we have the Reckless Racer, a couple of Aether Chasers, Sweatworks Brawler, which we do have 2 more up there, Free Jam Regent. So our red pool is really deep. Our white had a lot of removal, and we actually ended up cutting a couple removal pieces in Caught in the Brights and in Fairgrounds Warden in favor of 2 revoked privileges and a Thopter Arrest. We also are playing Eagle for our top end, and honestly, this felt a lot better than an initial build of trying to push into black. Really, the only playable black cards for us were the Fatal Push, Daring Demolition, the Aetherborn, and possibly the Fenhauler. Now, when we're talking about the difference between draft and sealed, in draft it tends to be a lot quicker. In sealed, you want more power. Like power level matters here, which is why while this curve that we have here looks great, often you'll have a more top heavy curve, or you'll have a very awkward curve where you may be missing a lot of like 2 drops or 3 drops in favor of better 4 drops or 5 drops. So, in talking about 3 color decks, Jamie, what have you noticed are some good archetypes for 3 colors?
Um, so that's a very interesting question. Um, so I'm very much against three colors a lot of times, except for if you need removal to make your deck stronger. So like in this case here, we're definitely splashing for the removal and the anthem effect, which I think is very strong. Um, especially with sealed, you want to, yeah, like you said, you want to bring in more power. You want to have a synergistic game plan in sealed as much as you can. I know it's very dependent on what you open for sure. So I guess the archetypes don't always mesh the way you could make them work out in draft because you have less control over what cards you're getting. So the archetypes end up being a little bit skewed in sealed. Do you agree with that?
I know that when we were speaking about building this deck, we were looking at these 2 Sweatworks brawlers. Okay, and we're like, wow, we have 3 Sweatworks brawlers. This is going to be great. But our only artifact producers right now, and at least in red, were the 2 Aether Chasers, which can't be depended upon. A Smuggler's Copter, Renegade Map, an Implement of Combustion, and just a couple others here that really aren't that good. Um, Skyskiff is a good option if you need it. Fabrication Module is another good option if you need it. Welder Automaton, same thing. But in looking at that, was pushing more medium artifacts worth the payoff that we would get from running 2 more Sweatworks brawlers and being able to cast Free Jam Region a little bit earlier? Not as much. And even in black, we only, unless I'm mistaken, we only had the Fenhauler in terms of improvise. So improvise wasn't really going to be our main focal point in this. On the second iteration of it, we were looking at counters, trying to make the Constrictor work, but there wasn't enough counters in black to be able to again merit going on that as a full game plan. So if you don't have all the pieces that you need for a very synergistic token or counter deck or a very synergistic improvised deck, what you end up doing is you do what basically we did, and you just pick some of the best cards that you can have and move on from there. Um, so when we were looking through our pools, we ended up with red and green as being our stronger, more top heavy um, cards, and then red and white were primarily our removal as well. So we ended up with this, a lovely little Naya deck that I think should do pretty well.
Yeah, the curve looks great. The creatures are strong.
The only creature I am considering here is Aetherstream Leopard. What's your feeling on that card?
Uh, you're you don't like it because we don't have a lot of energy to support it. Is that what your thoughts are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think it's fine as a 2/3 trample for 3. And with Tusker to put a counter on it and the Seed Sculptors to put counters on it, it can be a legitimate threat.
Yeah, that's the one reason why I'd still actually like it. Trample is important in sealed. Any sort of evasion is important. That's why if you're playing against blue and white, it's sometimes very difficult for a low to the ground, even red black or red white deck to get around or at least consistently win because you just can't block their flyers.
Yeah.
And it's just there's so many different ways that you can build decks in limited, at least in sealed. But the main things to always remember are you always want power level on the top end. You don't want your deck to fizzle. You can make a very fast deck, but chances are, more often than not, it will fizzle on you before you can win. And I've had opponents. I've built very aggressive, 2-3 heavy, 2-drop and 3-drop heavy decks that the opponent has come back from 5 life and won because I couldn't finish up with the power level that they had. The other thing you always want removal. Even if that means splashing a color for removal, you still do it. Um, Not having access to it, I would say at least 4 kinds of removal. I know that we have a lot here with, I think we have what, 5 or 6, um, which we got lucky in that respect. But without removal, you're pretty much going to be dead in the water. The board will get too wide, and especially if you don't have a great top end, you're just going to get run over at some point in time. And finally, don't look at what your rares are. Don't Well, always look at what your rares are, but don't be beholden to what your rares are. I mean, even if we sort by rarity here, we got Karizev's Expertise and Eliminate the Competition. Those are great. You know, Lightning Runner also can be very good in an energy-based strategy, but at the same time, we can't play them because they don't fit what we're trying to do. So always look at the full picture and not just what are my rares, what are my uncommons, and then try to build a deck from there. I don't know. A useful trick that someone once told me, and I think a lot of people do, especially with sealed, is they pull all of their playable cards into their pool. Okay, then they sort by color, and they see which pools are the deepest, and then they'll choose colors based on that, and then build a deck around that.
It's a good strategy. Instead of just looking at everything as a whole and then just deciding, oh, I think I'm just going to wing it and play this. It's important to look at everything for sure. See the full picture.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, like even myself, initially I was like, oh look, I have a snake and a fatal push, this and then eliminate the competition. This can be awesome. But looking at the black pool, it's very, very medium. You know,
Yeah.
so it ended up not even being worth the splash because we did have Daring Demolition, we did have Gifted Aetherborn, but double splashing a color is often very difficult, especially with the limited fixing that we have.
Yeah,
So it's better
definitely.
just to stay in that and literally splash for anything with a single color. That's why also we're not playing the aerial responder. It's too hard to get double white by that time that you'd want it. All right. So unless you have any other comments, Jamie, we're going to wrap this up for today for the competitive Swiss Sealed League.
I just want to say this was a really tough build because we had a lot of options. And that, I mean, that's a good thing. It's very good to have those options. But yeah, it's hard to know if you have the right build. But the great thing about these leagues is you can always switch it up. You can build different decks and have different options. But
Yeah,
yeah.
you can even go down this cool little thing here and create a new deck.
Yeah, sometimes if I'm feeling unsure, I will build pretty much every combination just because you have the time, like you have unlimited time to build these decks. So if you're feeling unsure, you can definitely do that.
Alright, so thank you for joining us on Limited Archetypes. Again, this archetype is pretty much the straightforward, let's play the best creatures and removal that we can. So not too many synergies here. Hopefully next time we will get a better sealed pool to talk about different synergies with you. Other than that, have a great rest of your day.